Hi, hello, and welcome to our webinar where we'll be chatting with Jason Murphy from St. George's University about how better detections empowered business efficiency and team collaboration over at St. George's. My name is Alexa Araneta, and I focus on product marketing here at AnvilLogic. Please feel free to put questions in the chat, and we'll get to those as much as we can throughout our conversation. So to start off, Jason, how about you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone, talk a little bit more about your background and how you got into cybersecurity.
I'm Jason Murphy. I've been in IT work for over 20 years now. I started as a system administrator doing network engineering, and then that was probably a good 15 years of my life. And then back in 2015 is when I made a full-time move to IT security. And one of the ways that came to be is an interesting comment from my high school track coach, when I was asking for some advice going into college and things like that. And he gave some advice about, you know what, get a job first. The skills you have, get a good job, do that. And if something you want to do for a hobby, you do it on the side. And if you do it well enough and you could turn to a professional career with it, make that jump at that time. But don't put yourself in a position where you don't have a stable job. So I kind of applied that to my move to IT security. I was good at IT. It was a natural skill set for me, and I think I did well or okay in that field. And then the time came where I had the opportunity to switch to IT security but full time. I always did it on the side. I always did it as a hobby. It was always enjoyable for me. So when that opportunity arose, I thought about an old coach. I'm like, you know what? Now's that time. And that's when I decided to go full on into IT security, and I never looked back because it's something I enjoy doing. Some of the few non-work related things I enjoy doing is I love home automation. So right now I'm using OpenHAB at home, running a nice Raspberry Pi. I love the Z-Wave, the Zigbee stuff. It's so cool making your own network with these things and turn your lights on and off. It's enjoyable. I love technical stuff, but it's not security. It's nice to break away from your day job to do some other stuff. It's more technology, but that's what I love doing. I'm not going to stop doing tech. So it's a little tidbit about some of my other hobbies.
Very cool. I don't do home automation. I haven't dabbled in that yet, but that's great to hear that you do. I'm sure plenty of folks in the audience are relate to that side hobby that you have. And it's great to hear that you've had a mentor early in life that really helped guide you and help marry your interest in IT and your career together. And so kind of pivoting on that, love to ask you what you do at SGU, how long you've been there, how big your team is, and what's been your primary focus since joining that team?
So in August of 2019, my former boss recruited me to work at St. George's as the information security director there. And she tasked me with building a dedicated IT security team. They had a couple of folks doing some basic security stuff, important basic security stuff, but she wanted me to up the game, get more full-time folks in full-time security and going outside of the basics, getting more involved with the business to figure out what's going on and all aspects of IT security, even getting more involved with the compliance team. So we could help work together with them to get compliance going, to get all those little things that matter. And we started out with, it was me and one other person. We quickly evolved into 4 of us, and just recently we increased to a size of 6, so 5 team members and me leading the team. So I feel like it's a good size for us. We're all getting stuff, and we had to ramp up slowly as we built out the security framework. We acquired a lot of technologies in the past 3 years, and now we're really digging into the use of those technologies and making them work together and the integrations and whatnot.
And and so your focus has been really building out the team and getting all of the technologies in place. And so, with all the different security tools that you have out in the market, how do you kind of narrow it down and decide what to implement in your stack?
So in my organization, how I approach things, I like to revolve around core technologies and my core philosophy to doing security. So I look at a new application, I say, all right, how does it interact with my core technology? Can it work with my log aggregation system? Does it work with my SIM system? Does it work with whatever system it is? If it doesn't work with them, it's kind of a red flag for me. And then is the system workable for my team? So can the system help them learn, or do I have to bring experts? So I love technologies that have a smooth learning curve to them. They require some learning, but I want to be a smooth one and give the opportunity for my team to learn it, not go out and hire someone who can use that tool. And does a tool create efficiencies? Does it save my team time, or am I just buying a tool to push where that time is being done or taken away from? That's not a net gain, since my team does all the aspects of IT security. It's not like we're shifting it to another team completely, which is really not a nice thing to do either. So those are the big things I look for. Of course, the budget or whatnot, but it's got to work with my core tech and how I approach stuff. And it also has to, one last thing I always look for is the future of the tool. Does the tool talk about what they're going to do? They have a roadmap they're looking to do. So I know in the future it's got flexibility. So we're just a one-trick pony tool, or is it a tool that I could actually pivot? I go down a different route with my security. Will this tool do it, or are they at least thinking about doing it? And that goes a long way to help me choose a tool.
That's a really great point because, you mentioned that you started off with two, yourself and another team member, and now you've grown to a team of six. And so, having the roadmap for what tools you choose to invest in, is it going to grow with you and your team, right? Like, I think that's really important to consider. And then so, kind of pivoting off of that, what made the Anvalogic platform so enticing to you and the problems that you and your team were trying to solve?
The initial problems for us was rolling out of the box alerts with the current SIM took more time than it would with Anvalogic, because there was less alerts. So Anvalogic gave us the ability to just roll out alert really fast and to tweak that alert for an environment. Not every environment's the same. Out of the box is really never truly out of the box. It's a matter of how much you got to tweak. And combine the easy ability to tweak plus the versioning control that Anvalogic provides makes wanting to tweak simple. Oh, didn't work out. Whoop, quick roll back the version. Where did we go wrong? Like prior tool didn't have all that kind of control. So it was harder to just go because you couldn't really roll back. It's all, we got to roll back quick, and Anvalogic allowed us to do that. And even for new or custom type of alerts, it also reduced the time to do it, primarily because of the versioning control. Maybe that's an amazing feature there that helped us just willing to roll stuff out. So if we made a mistake, we can turn it back. So that saved us a lot of time in that area, which we could use in other areas. And Anvalogic also had the roadmap I like. I love my current log aggregation tool. It's great. But you should never lock yourself into any technology, no matter how much you like it, because you can't predict the future. Anvalogic had foresight to do some stuff that I think will allow us to pivot to that area if that time comes, or when that time comes. Who knows? But they had a good philosophy and a good roadmap, and that combined that with immediate results with potential future flexibility, it became a tool of choice for us.
Cool. And how has that directly kind of impacted the way that you and your team work? Like, can you give us an example of how you've become a little bit more efficient as a result?
So we were able to react faster throughout new alerts. If something's in news, hey, there's an armory rule for this current threat that's happening or something like that. That's always nice. You can pivot really fast to it. But also just getting those alerts out faster and the new alerts out faster has freed up time. And my team is not just the SOC. We're a full service IT security team. So we also need our own security controls. We do a lot of non-technical work. We could do more security awareness with people. We could dig into alerts and reach out to the department where it fired from to really understand where that alert came from. We could sit down with them and ask them, what's your process around this? And we reverse engineer and see, oh, there's more security issues there. Or there's no security issues. We don't know until we look at it. But you really need to free up time to speak with your coworkers. And you can't do that if you're running around just constantly closing alerts, or you're constantly closing too many false positives. So it's that's what freed up more time for us to do other things in the area of IT security.
Nice. I love to hear that story. Um, that's great to hear, see and hear that you've been able to do other work besides, just kind of being more in the trenches. You've been able to collaborate with more of your team members across teams, and just generally educate the organization as a whole. Um, and so pivoting a little bit, I know that in our one of our previous conversations before, SGU has a wide global footprint. I think you mentioned that you had 3 campuses, um, you know, 10,000, over 10,000 current students, double the amount of alumni, and a smattering of like staff and faculty. And so I know that I'm sure you have lots of different things that you could potentially focus on throughout the course of a day or a week. How do you prioritize?
Outside of any immediate security alerts that require prioritization, or your vulnerability management programs showing vulnerabilities that need to be patched right away or have some kind of solution to remediate. That's of those obvious priorities. We try and prioritize about what we can accomplish. And that comes into what can we accomplish without disrupting the business. So we think about, all right, well, we know this area has a problem. We want to work on that. And we start reaching out to the business, talk to them about, hey, if we did some security controls like this, how does it impact your processes? And then we figure out if it doesn't impact their processes, how can we tweak it to accomplish what we're trying to do, reduce the risk, and also reduce the risk of them having issues so they can function and do their job. We don't want security to be a barrier to getting people's jobs done. We want to be, work with them, make a healthy relationship with the unit. So I'll prioritize with what we can accomplish based on conversations and relationships with the rest of the business. We don't want to be disruptive. We want to be added to people. And sometimes we find technology that actually make their jobs a bit easier. So that's rare, but it happens. You don't always have to get rid of all convenience for the sake of security.
Yeah, I love that because I feel like sort of a stigma that you kind of hear from others that security can be a blocker for certain issues. But I think if you really get security right, it can really like help propel the business forward and really like enable it to progress even further, enable innovation, et cetera, et cetera. And so, you know, now that you've kind of implemented, tools and you have a healthy amount of tools in your stack, such as AmberLogic, um, and they've been helping to solve the challenges you've been brought in to help solve. Are there any like new insights that you've discovered that have empowered SGU forward in any sort of way?
That's not the obvious of getting rid of security, or not getting rid of, reducing security risk and knowing the company's operating in a safer manner. Nothing's ever truly safe. All we can do is improve upon it and minimize the risk the best we can. We'll find things such as like a pretty common alert, like low risk alerts quite often. Low risk alerts come in and quite often they fire because of a less than efficient process on the business side, usually around email. So that's why I always love to focus on all the DLP alerts. On DLP, it's a bad thing. You should be sending stuff through mail, even though mail nowadays is actually more secure with the evolution of MFA requiring TLS, and rarely do you see mail go from Microsoft to Google through a third party. You almost have direct links nowadays. So it's not that it's completely unsafe nowadays, but it's inefficient. You'll find people using mail to transfer things back and forth for data or ask requests. But how do you track all that in mail? It doesn't work very well. When you have a shared mail account, you get 3 or 4 people using it who did the work. And that makes the process inefficient. And people just get bad efficiencies on a good thing. So finding low-level alerts usually lead to a process that can be improved. But we wait to find a pattern. Someone will say, oh, I do this, do that. But when you doesn't mean much, but you have to have that pattern. So over the course of a few months, you could see all these low risk alerts forming a pattern, and then you can reach out to the business and say, hey, what's going on here? We see a lot of these alerts. Maybe you could help us walk through how you do it. And then all of a sudden we could offer new solutions, say, you know what, you don't have to do it this way. Maybe we can make you a SharePoint site or something like that. And then that's a more secure way for us and more security visibility too. It's not just about locking it down. It's also about you have the visibility around it. So if something bad does happen, you can track it back. So you kind of guide them to solutions that are planned and work within your security stack, and probably are a better system for them to use. But you don't know that until you reach out and you have to collect all the alerts and you figure it out that way. That's one way I love using the SOC to help the business.
Yeah, and I think that leads us to a really interesting question that we got from the audience too about impact to the business. How do you show value and investment, especially to kind of executive leadership about what it is that you're doing and your team's focused on?
So we try not to go with look at how many breaches we got. That's usually not a fun one. Or I'm not a big fan of just metrics from the hardware. Oh, the firewall blocks things all day. Well, it's going to block things all day because that's what happens in real life. And you always have alerts. They're never going to stop. 99% of alerts are not that they're false positives. It's that something happened in a legit way, and you're just making sure it happened in a legit way, because nowadays a lot of attacks are like, live off the land type stuff. It's the way it is. Or internal attacks are people actually using their access to do bad things. So that's even harder to figure out. So I try not to go too heavy on type of metrics that don't mean much. I like to do my best to lean into how we help the business. So how often we got involved with the business to improve a process, or how often we got involved in vulnerability management, a little bit different, still kind of technical, but we still need to identify high risk issues. Or how many of the high risk issues did we find? You just can't trust a vulnerability scan to show everything. Real vulnerability risk depends on your environment. How is the network set up? What are all the security controls? So it takes some effort there to really close those off. But even have to lean more into how do we help compliance? So compliance is doing a lot of non-technical work, but they can reach out to security to help ask, all right, how are we compliant with this? Because we're kind of in the mix of a lot of the systems. And so we can talk to the compliance people to set them up to understand what we're doing in a less technical manner. And then they can see how that applies to actual compliance. And you could eventually get to that compliance. Hey, we're finally compliant, because they didn't understand we had all this stuff. They just need someone to explain where did that fit in the NIST, which eventually leads to GDPR or CCPA. I think they changed that name recently. How that all works. It's all about working with other units. So how are we helping the other teams kind of helps us, instead of just fighting the bad guys. Because in the end, if you have a great security stack, right, you're doing a marvelous job. Pure luck that an attacker didn't come get you, like, say things like that, and then you get breached the next day. But say you got lucky for a while, and all of a sudden it looks like nothing's really being blocked. So the metrics may be misleading. So it's kind of hard to lean on just metrics. I really love to lean into how we help other teams with our tools and our knowledge, pretty much.
Yeah, I love that, because it's more than just the metrics and kind of the numbers, but really more of like the human element of cybersecurity and what the team is doing, and collaboration and all of that goodness that you can codify in numbers, but it really helps kind of just bring the whole business together and move it forward. And so I know you mentioned a couple of times about non-technical security work and how kind of like utilizing the Anvologic platform has helped you to kind of free up your team's time to achieve that. Can you describe a little bit more about what that is for folks that may not be aware of what that means?
One of the first things that come to mind is our security policies, or any type of policies. So we want to make sure we roll out policies that people will understand and people can follow. Quite often you'll find companies or organizations release a policy that's, people can't actually follow it. So they're immediately going to start breaking it because there's no solution to make them not violate it. So we want to make sure we find security controls and we reach the business to make sure when we roll out a policy, the policy is not going to be disruptive. There's really not a lot of tech work there. It's literally just reaching out to business and talking to them about how do they do their jobs. And we don't want to roll a policy out that immediately violating. We're going to work with them and say, hey, maybe some new ideas to do this process in a more safer manner, and a manner that fits the policy to help us all out. So rolling out security policy is one of the big non-technical things. And then maybe even bigger is security awareness programs. And I'm not talking about the simple phishing exercise that go out, which they're great, they're important, and be able to go to little trainings and whatnot. Even some we occasionally do in-person type trainings, or on on remotely in-person trainings for phishing to help people out. But this goes beyond that. I'm talking about when you get a low risk security alert, or any security alert for that matter, you actually reach out to the person and take the time to talk to them about what could have happened. Not just saying, oh, you have a violation, don't do that. No, why did it happen? Maybe they're doing something a different way, or they're trying to do something else a different way, but really talking to them to understand what we're trying to do and how they're trying to do something. And we come to a compromise in the middle to make it work for them, so they understand what it is. And I found by taking the actual time to talk to people about the alerts and explain it in a more simple manner, or more non-technical manner, that people hear it and they actually do something about it. One of my goals, I'll find a great accomplishment when this happens, is I want folks to naturally think of security. I don't like the idea of people being told to do security. You want them to do it on their own in a natural way, because, oh, wait, I had that conversation with Jason. He said this, and they're on the phone with their vendor. They asked the vendor, right, hey, do you have this, this, and that? And they just did it. They didn't require sending it over to IT security saying, hey, can you assess these questions, or can you ask them, what are your security needs? It's not about my security needs. It's about the company's security needs. It ain't me. It's us. So that's my goal. Is security awareness goes beyond just little testing. It's about really talking to people and getting them to understand. A lot of folks won't. They're busy doing other stuff. But you get one or two of those wins, and it starts to move more. People talk to each other and say, hey, no, the security guys aren't so bad. They don't talk over your head. They don't talk about things that you never understand to begin with. They actually try and explain it in non-technical terms. And that goes a long way. Really taking the time, not just pretending to take the time. That's a big thing for me. And there's one other thing that's sort of non-technical, is more audit type alerts. I mean, it's partially technical because you have to make an alert that's based on logs and data and reports or whatnot. But about auditing our own stuff and sending out, this security control is missing, this security control is missing, this person has MFA. Very simple things to keep the environment healthy. So I don't want to be finding the problems after the fact, like in the we have a breach, but finding out that we're missing some security controls, or more about the audit, because fixing an audit alert is less risky than fixing an actual security alert. So that's the three big non-technical things I always think about. I'm sure there's more, but that's all I got right now.
Yeah, and I love hearing that perspective from you, and would like to know, why is that important for you to do, not just, personally and within your organization, but just kind of within the industry as a whole?
Because that's kind of fun. It's in our industry, healthcare and/or education, I think it's important because we need to be more proactive in what we do, getting security controls out there, getting the rest of the business to get on board, because we can't compete with bigger industries, a high-tech industry, the financial industry. We can't acquire multiple highly experienced security people in our environments. We can't compete with what they could offer. So we need to think more about how can we get more mileage. You know what? We may not be super experienced. We could bring in some tech to help us out there. What we could do is really reach out to people and get them to help us, to work with us. So we got to get creative in how we get security done. And proactive is a lot easier to do than hunting. So I think our industry really needs that, because like I said, we can't compete with high tech and finance. We can't just pay giant salaries to security professionals. We have to find a balance of existing skill sets, good tools, and working with the business in a true way.
Yeah, definitely. That keep going back to the human element of cybersecurity, but I think it really rings true, and the team aspect of it, and really reaching out and collaborating with others. That, as you said, really helps with the proactive level of work that you can do to help with the reactiveness of what what can happen if you didn't go out and proactively reach out to folks. Um, and so I know that you mentioned, kind of like, you're in a nice Venn diagram of the higher education industry as well as the healthcare industry, being that St. George's has a great medical school. So being that that you are in that intersection, what trends have you been seeing propping up within those two industries, and kind of how do you keep up with those?
I think our two biggest ones come from efficiency on the attacker side, and yeah, I think it's really just about the speed. I think about it. It's
Mhm.
I find most people in this healthcare and education sector, we get a lot of attackers who are what I call like common organizational attackers. So they kind of attack all of us at once. They have templated attacks, very similar to security testing tools that you have. It just templates things out. We get a lot of that stuff. We're generally fortunate that we don't got high-end attackers, excluding ransomware operators who get a hook into you. Then all of a sudden you got advanced attackers in your environment, which is even scarier, right? In the past, it was just they're going after big finance, high tech, and the government. But now the ransomware people will go after anyone if they get a small hook, and they'll send in the good people. There's always a chance to make money. So that's a little scary for our education and healthcare, and I've seen it actually has caused a lot of heartache in our sector. So like the whole big thing there. But what I've noticed for the most part is they've gotten really efficient. Once you fall for a fish, in our industry's attackers are really quick to execute. Sometimes they give us some time, but we've seen them operate in under 7 minutes. And because they become so more efficient at taking those credentials and doing something, we've had to respond somehow. And we try and search for compromised accounts or potentially compromised accounts in a quicker fashion. Like we got that search and run every 5 minutes because we now know they can execute in 7 minutes. And I'm trying to limit how they attack us. So conditional access has become one of the best tools. Let's force attackers to go through a different route. Let's not let them just attack our Office 365 from any device in the world. Let's make them get on one of our devices, or at least make them find a way to pretend they're one of our devices. Breach the network first. So get them to do more stuff. Every move they make is a chance for us to identify them. So make them jump through more steps so we have a chance to identify them. So that's one thing to try and handle how quickly they're moving or whatnot. So that's the big thing. Just they've gotten efficient, and we have to find a way to be more efficient ourselves.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's really good insight too, with like, developing some sort of honeypot that they can like get to, and so that you can actually see what it is that they're doing, so you can kind of pivot and make those rules to catch them quicker, catch malicious activity faster. Um, and so pivoting a little bit, I'd love to hear from you about what you feel like, security professionals, you've been in the industry for a while, are what you feel like they are continually like overlooking as they're kind of going their day to day.
I think it goes back to a lot of the reach out, legitimately reaching out to the business to see how they're doing stuff instead of just arbitrarily making security controls up. You got to work with the business and create that relationship. Not always easy. Sometimes very hard, but you do it because you're doing it because you care. So that's always a big thing. And sometimes I feel like the basics may get missed. I always feel like you're at a conference and they're always talking about the new stuff, which as a conference before, I guess, always with the new stuff. But sometimes they forget the little stuff, the basics. Some of the basics are auditing your own security controls, making sure they're in place. So one thing I always used to hear a lot from companies, oh, we had MFA on. How'd you get breached? Oh, MFA wasn't on that account. Why aren't you sending weekly reports for every person who doesn't have MFA on it? Or if they haven't enrolled their device, like little things like that, just making sure your existing security controls are working efficiently. Don't go jumping to new technology if you haven't fully, well, at least 80 or 85% rolled out your current technology. They kind of run too fast to more tools. Just use the ones you have more. And I always think that's something that gets missed.
Yeah, no, that's a great point that you make, especially if you're on the smaller side of an organization, as you mentioned, you don't necessarily have the big budget that, the financial services industry has. So making sure you're really utilizing all the tools that you have in place and before you start bringing in maybe additional technologies and stuff like that, really evaluate what it is that you're using and how can you leverage it a little bit more before you start kind of like shopping around. Yeah. So, you mentioned that, you grew to a team of 6, including yourself. If you built out the team that was previously 2 all the way up to 6. And so with the very known cyber skills gap that we are all kind of faced with, how have you been addressing this within the team that you've been building out? And is there anything that you're looking for while you're hiring? I think that would be a great insight to share, especially for any fellow like directors and SOC managers that are currently listening.
Yes. So I have two general techniques I like to follow. One is I acquire technologies that have a smoother learning curve and build or work so you could learn it. You got basic skills on using tech. You could learn through the tool. So it's important. Not all tools do that. Some just have this crazy learning curve. Some just they're not good for it. You make a change. Oh no, what happened? So I think I mentioned version control a couple of times with Analogic. That alone goes a long way because people aren't scared to make an alert change. You can roll it right back real fast. Something goes wrong. So it's just tools that make it safer to implement them, so people aren't worried about making a mistake. Mistakes happen, but people don't like making them. And the other big way I try and address the skills gap is when I hire and when I go through the interviews. Of course, like most people say, I'm looking for just generally intelligent people or people who could learn. You don't have to have security, IT security to necessarily be hired. As long as you kind of demonstrate that passion and in some way in the interview you prove that you were able to learn something new that's not completely in your wheel set. I mean, maybe you made a program or you have an explanation for your previous job, you asked to solve something that had nothing remotely to do with your job, but you still did it. You explained how you came to a solution by what you looked at, what you read, how you got there to demonstrate you could learn, you could research, you can get out there and figure out the problem. You don't need to know all the tools to get to the answer. You learn those tools or you build those tools. So that's great. I always look for that first, not necessarily a big list of security skill sets. And even then, if I know what someone's background is in their former jobs, I look for their skills adjacent. So we have your SOC skills, you have other cybersecurity skills. What skills are similar to those but exist in elsewhere in IT support, in marketing, in data analytics, in lots of different places. So the customer service, even just good customer service goes a long way for someone who has a security philosophy of security awareness being so important. It means you could talk to people. You could find a way to relate to them. You could have the most skilled person in the world, but if they can't relate to another human being about security, you cannot accomplish a connection. So they're not going to hear what you're saying because you're not using the right words. Words are extremely important in this world. When you consult people the wrong words, but you also can't explain something. You have to have those common definitions. And good customer service, they figure that out. Not remotely a technical skill, but can be very valuable in security. So since we're a full IT security department, we have room for that. And even such thing as our data analytics people, they're really good at looking through data. They're really good at looking logs. So they can help create new alerts. We have to do custom ones. They get data, they understand data. I'm a data analytics person, nothing to do with security, right? Not true. It's just the skills adjacent goes such a long way. And that's how I try and address that here, because again, we're not big industry. We can't just throw money and hire all the latest experienced people. So we need to be more creative. And it's also more rewarding in the end. It really is nice to bring a team member on who wants to do security. If they're coming from a different department, a different background, they're getting nice IT security, they're getting into it, and they're learning new things. It's so exciting to see someone's face light up when they just learned something. I love that experience personally. I'm hoping they do too, and that's why I end up being here. So good culture goes a long way too.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you brought up one, the skills adjacent part. I think that's super important, especially in terms of recruitment and kind of building up people's skills that not necessarily they may not have like everything, like all the security skills checked off, but they have the opportunity to really grow in that sense. And as you mentioned, it's great for them to like build up their skills and learn more and achieve accomplishments that maybe they didn't wouldn't have the opportunity elsewhere, but also for you in terms of your development as like, a manager and a you know someone that's bringing the team members on and helping them to elevate themselves. I think that's really important. Good job, Jason.
I tried.
So,
Totally.
so we have a question from the audience. Since you've had, quite a long experience in cybersecurity, what still makes this an exciting uh, industry to be a part of?
Constant change. Something I've always enjoyed in my life is constant change. I don't like to just do one thing. I don't stay content for very long with one hobby. I'm always jumping around hobbies and stuff like that. So it's the constant change I love. And it's great because it's not just changing because there's new technology. You're literally forced to change and learn new things because of how attackers change. There's other people who are being creative in how to exploit us, how to attack us, how to social engineer us. There's other people. So you're literally competing or fighting with other human beings. That's a bit of excitement there. It's fun. I wish we didn't have to. It'd be fantastic if the industry never even existed, right? But since it does, I like to do what I do at least, or find it exciting. And my personality just fits with IT security because of the constant change and me changing hobbies. It fits so well. If you find a job that fits your natural personality, it makes the job a little bit easier, at least from like a mental health perspective, because you're not freaking out about it because you're enjoying it. You're just a little freaked out from all the work, which is different than not being comfortable. You should always be comfortable in what you're doing. And so I think that's why I love it so much. It just fits my personality, and it makes me happy to work on it.
Yeah, definitely. And so that kind of like pivots on a question that I'm curious now. What keeps you up at night?
It's fun. In the past, I would have said a couple of technical issues I do, but now nothing keeps me up at night because I've accepted that something bad could happen at any given time. So if you're up at night, I mean, that's just not going to be healthy for you. Like I've learned to accept I can't control everything in IT security. I mean, it's literally other people trying to attack your company. They're creative too. They're probably more creative than we are. We just got the advantage of having special tools and stuff, knowing your environment. But yeah, I've learned that I can't control everything. I can't even control my own budget, right? You can't even control what your own employees and coworkers are going to do. And you definitely can't control attackers. So you have to be comfortable getting rid of that and understanding that you can't control it. So I sleep fine at night now. I know I did my best with what I have, the resources I was given, and I gave it my best to defend the company. If and when we get breached, I know I did the best I could, and I'm proud of what I did. So I can sleep at night. I did my job well with the resources I had and with the right attitude.
Yeah, I think that's a really great philosophy to have, not just within cybersecurity, but just kind of in general. I like to live my life in that I can only control what I can control, right? There's bigger issues at hand, but as long as I know that I've done my best, same as you with the resources and what I have at my disposal, then I know that I did my part. And so we're nearing the end of our conversation amazingly. This went by super fast. um, and so just kind of wrapping up the topic of like career, our career conversation, what's the key to longevity, especially for those that are kind of just starting out or for those that have been in it for a while?
For those who have been in it for a while, the control stuff I was alluding to. If you've been in this industry for a long time and there's security issues keeping you up at night, you may be in the wrong industry. That is going to wear you out and you may want to get out of it. For those who are getting into it, accept failure. everyone fails at everything to do at some point, right? It can be something as simple as making a report. All right, fail. I tried fixing a computer. Oh, I failed at that. I was trying to recover some data from a server. I failed at that. When it comes to IT security, you're going to fail more. And quite often you're going to fail hard because of what we're trying to achieve. We're fighting other human beings. So you're gonna fail a lot, or you don't understand the logs, you misinterpret the log data, you misinterpreted the security event and disabled a bunch of accounts you shouldn't have, and people start yelling at you. It's gonna happen. You're gonna fail. If you're not comfortable with failing when you first start out, you're gonna be uncomfortable, you're gonna stress out, and you're not gonna learn. Personally, I felt I've always learned a lot more when I failed at something. There's more to review. I'm terrible at taking healthy criticism. Oh, I have taken healthy compliments. Oh, good job. And I don't know how to celebrate a job well done. I just move on to the next task. But I take criticism fantastic. I love being criticized, point out all my flaws. I want to fix my flaws or try my best at doing better with my flaws. I'm not too big on just saying what I did well. There's always plenty of bad things to fix. I did it well. All right. So what do I do now? There's nothing to build on from doing something well, except the job well done, a good feeling. That's important. But yeah, I think the failing hard, failing often, you better get comfortable with it. And it's an opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. Very much subscribe to the philosophy of failure is an opportunity to learn and grow. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Um, and one more question from the audience here. What's next for you and your team? I think this is kind of along the lines of like now that you've kind of achieved X, like what are you going to do kind of going forward into this next year?
Yes. So we're at the state where we have a solid security framework. We have a lot of tools we brought online the past 3 years. It sounds like a long time to onboard a lot of tools, but it really takes that long. So now we have a solid framework of tools that are running. We want to focus on using them more, getting them integrated more, really getting the mileage out of them, and also improve the metrics we talked about earlier, is getting those metrics out and those qualitative ones about how we help the business, not just the simple metrics that people like to see. And there is some said that basic metrics are important because it kind of makes sure your tools are actually working. If you never get an alert and something, you get like 100 alerts per day, and also you get like one, all right, it's kind of broke probably, right? So yeah, just more of the metrics and qualitative metrics to say all the money they just invested into us in the past 3 years, bought all these tools, paying all these licenses, hired all these people. All right, what am I getting out of this now? You know, it sounds good. Yeah, we got security, it's good, but we want to prove what we're doing. And we also want to make sure we're really helping people with the tools we got. We got some tools, we got some insight. I want to be able to help the rest of the business with the tools that we purchase. But yeah, it's really about getting those tools working much better now, and better processes. You know, you have to have good processes. And if you don't, things don't work well. You know, efficiency is important.
Yeah, definitely. It all comes back to people, process, and technology, right? I mean, that's been around for so long now, but it's the framework of that is always just key to getting that right, in order to move the business along, protect the business, et cetera, et cetera. It really all comes back to people, process, and technology. Um, and so I think we got a lot of insight out of our conversation today. Just kind of thinking off the top of my head, we talked about collaboration, um, investment in tools and how critical it is to kind of being more efficient. Um, and so, love to, give you the mic, Jason, again, like, for anyone that is going to take away one thing from our conversation today, what would that be?
I'm going to take that one thing and throw an extra one on for fun. Well, then, just really talk to people in the business. Got to create relationships. It's not a technology thing anymore. IT security it's a relationship business. Half of it's all relationships and getting people to trust you, work with you, open up to you, so you could help fight things. You can't do anything if you don't know. Knowing's half the battle. You know, G.I. Joe. He taught that like when I was 10 years old. So that's important. Really, the relationship building is extremely important. Do not underrate it. And if you're bad at talking to people, practice. Find a way to practice and talk to people. Find a way to use non-technical words that speak to what you're trying to do. It really is an important thing. It took me many years to learn, and I think I've gotten better. I am no way good at it, but I honestly try. And if you don't honestly try something, then you're not trying at all. I give it your all. And the second thing is when you're looking for products, chances are you're gonna buy a product you're gonna have it for a long time, hopefully, right? And you'll have a product for a long time if the company shares the same security philosophies as you and they have a vision. So don't just buy the tool for what it does. Buy a tool for the people that are there, the people who are driving it, from the leadership down onto the people that you first talk to. Because if they don't believe in the tool, why should you? So I'd really talk to your partners and get to know them a little bit more to see if they actually share your view of this stuff. I mean, it's fun that the first line salesman can say a lot about a company. And some of them are not that good. It's crazy. I don't know how they get salesmen who don't know how to express their care about this industry or care about the product or why their product is good, aside from like little scripted notes. It's important though. Get to know your partners, who you're working with, because if you don't believe in them, why bother with their product? So that's just some advice I have.
I love that. Chris, super great insight. Yeah, and so this has been a really great chat, and I appreciate all the insight and for taking the time with me today, Jason, to talk about your experience, and how you've been protecting the SGU and the team you've built out, and all the great things that I know that you and your team are going to accomplish within this next year. So thank you again for taking the time out to chat with me today.
And thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So thank you all so much for joining on our webinar today. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.